the Academy had witnessed countless legends, war heroes, fleet admirals, alien champions whose names echoed across entire star systems. Yet on that silent morning, every legend in history was forgotten, because the hologram hovering above Commandant Vex's podium showed only one person, a single human. The enormous lecture hall fell into absolute silence. More than 300 cadets from 17 different worlds stopped breathing almost at the same time. No one whispered. No one moved. Even the air seemed too afraid to stir. Commandant Vex stood motionless beneath the blue glow of the holographic projection, his sharp mandibles twitching ever so slightly, an almost invisible sign of unease. Those who knew him understood what that meant. Vex never showed fear. Not during wars. Not during invasions. Not even when facing creatures capable of tearing armored soldiers apart with their bare claws. But today was different. He slowly turned toward the image floating above him. The hologram rotated with chilling precision. A lone figure stood inside a corridor blackened by fire. The walls were scorched. Emergency lights flickered weakly through clouds of smoke. Bodies covered the floor. Some still wore shattered combat armor. Others lay motionless beside twisted weapons. At the center of that corridor stood one person. Her combat suit was burned almost beyond recognition. Blood stained one sleeve. Ash covered her boots. Her face remained hidden beneath drifting smoke. She looked less like a soldier, and more like the last survivor of the end of the world. Commandant Vex finally spoke. His voice echoed through the hall. This, he paused, is the individual believed responsible for the destruction of Carity Station. Every cadet stared at the projection. No one blinked. 63 Varan Marines. Another pause. 11 minutes. His mandibles clicked softly. No survivors. The words settled over the room like ice. A few cadets instinctively leaned back. Others exchanged nervous glances. Someone quietly swallowed. Even the strongest among them suddenly looked uncertain. Vex continued. We do not know this person's true identity. We do not know the full extent of their combat capabilities. We do not know how one individual accomplished what an entire battalion could not. The hologram slowly zoomed closer. Smoke drifted away for only a heartbeat. Just enough to reveal a pair of calm human eyes. Not angry. Not triumphant. Simply tired. The image froze. Vex looked across the lecture hall. If you ever encounter this individual, his voice hardened. Do not engage. A long silence followed. Report. Another pause. Retreat. Then one final command. Survive. No one laughed. No one questioned him. For the first time since entering the academy, 300 future officers looked genuinely afraid. Near the very back of the hall, hidden behind a Vraxan cadet nearly twice her size, a young human woman quietly released the breath she had been holding. She never looked up. Instead, she continued staring at the metal surface of her desk as though the lecture had nothing to do with her. Her name, at least according to Academy records, was Mara Chin. She was 26 years old. Average height. Average build. Former logistics officer. Minimal combat experience. No decorations. No remarkable achievements. The perfect definition of ordinary. Or at least, that was what every file in the Academy claimed. For 6 months, she had worked very hard to remain invisible. Never volunteered. Never argued. Never tried to impress anyone. She always chose the last seat in every classroom. She spoke only when necessary. Most cadets couldn't even remember hearing her voice. Exactly how she wanted it. Because attention had a way of digging up ghosts. The Kalen Academy orbited an aging red star at the edge of contested space. It was one of the few truly neutral places left in the galaxy. 17 different civilizations sent their brightest young officers there. Not because they trusted one another, but because sooner or later, they would probably end up fighting each other. Better to understand your future enemies before the war began. Humanity had only recently been accepted into the Galactic Concord. Many species still questioned whether humans deserved a place among them. Some viewed them as primitive. Others considered them dangerously unpredictable. A few believed they were simply lucky survivors of impossible battles. Almost nobody knew which version was true. Mara preferred it that way. The less anyone expected from her, the safer everyone remained. Later that afternoon, the crowded mess hall buzzed with excited conversation. Every table discussed only one thing: the monster of Carity Station. Did you see that footage? They say she fought an entire company alone. I heard she wasn't even human. They say she enjoys killing. Rumors multiplied faster than facts. Mara quietly stirred a bowl of steaming noodles without saying a word. Across from her sat Pell, a cheerful Tasari cadet with 4 arms and absolutely no understanding of personal space. Pell had practically adopted Mara during her first week at the academy, mostly because no one else wanted to sit beside the human. Pell tilted her head. You've barely touched your food. Mara forced a tiny smile. I'm thinking about the monster woman. Mara nodded slowly. Pell's antennae drooped. Everyone is. She leaned closer, lowering her voice dramatically. Did you see Korsk during the briefing? Mara raised an eyebrow. He almost fell out of his chair. Despite herself, Mara smiled. A warrior afraid of a hologram? Pell laughed. A very large warrior. Then her expression became serious again. I mean, if even Commandant Vex says to run instead of fight. She looked toward the window where distant stars drifted past. What kind of person could do something like that? Mara stared silently into her noodles. For a long moment, she said nothing. Finally, she spoke so quietly that only Pell could hear. We don't actually know what happened. Pell blinked. What? The reports. Mara carefully chose every word. They only tell part of the story. Pell studied her face. You sound like you've read military reports before. I have. You think they're wrong? Mara hesitated. Then she gently shook her head. I think. Sometimes history is written by the people who survive. Pell frowned thoughtfully. Before she could ask another question, Mara changed the subject. It had become second nature. 6 months of practice had taught her how to disappear in plain sight, how to smile without revealing anything, how to carry memories heavy enough to crush someone, while pretending they weighed nothing at all. Because no one at that table, no one in that academy, no one in the entire galaxy, knew the truth. They all feared the mysterious woman from Carity Station. They whispered about her. They imagined her as some unstoppable monster. They looked at the hologram, never realizing that the woman they feared was quietly eating noodles right beside them. For 6 long months, Mara Chun had perfected the art of being invisible. She never volunteered. She never argued. She never tried to prove herself. Every morning she blended into the sea of cadets from 17 different worlds, quietly attending lectures, finishing assignments, and disappearing before anyone had the chance to remember her name. It wasn't because she lacked confidence. It was because she knew something the others didn't. The people who survived wars weren't always the strongest. Sometimes, they were simply the ones nobody noticed. 2 weeks after Commandant Vex's unforgettable lecture, the Academy's emergency sirens echoed through every corridor. Cadets abandoned cafeterias, classrooms, and training fields, rushing toward Simulation Complex 3. Whispers spread faster than alarms. Live fire exercise. Boarding operation. Squads of 6. Final tactical assessment. Inside the enormous briefing chamber, Instructor Threll stood waiting. The towering Vraxan veteran carried enough scars to silence even the loudest cadets. His voice boomed across the room. Today's mission is simple. A holographic image of a damaged cargo vessel appeared behind him. You will board this abandoned freighter, reach the bridge, recover the classified data core, and extract before hostile reinforcements arrive. The hologram shifted, revealing narrow hallways filled with debris. Your ammunition has been replaced with military-grade stun rounds. They hurt. They break bones. And if your tactical decisions are poor enough, they kill your score. A ripple of nervous laughter moved through the room. Threll didn't smile. Real wars don't forgive mistakes. This simulation won't either. The squad assignments appeared on the central screen. Mara looked up, then quietly sighed. Bad luck. Very bad luck. Her team consisted of 5 cadets who couldn't have been more different. Pell, the cheerful Tasari who never stopped talking. The only reason academy life hadn't become unbearably lonely. Then came the Skarn twins. Massive creatures whose shoulders were almost wider than Mara was tall. Nobody knew which one was which. mostly because they communicated through grunts, head movements, and occasional growls. Then there was Io, a Draenic tactical genius. He had memorized every military doctrine published during the last 3 centuries. He quoted regulations the way other people breathed. Finally, there was Korsk, Threll's own nephew, a proud Vraxan cadet whose opinion of humanity had never improved since orientation day. He walked toward Mara while fastening the last plate of his combat armor. His expression carried the same quiet confidence it always did. "Stay behind me." Mara looked at him. "I'm part of the squad." "Exactly." He checked his rifle. "You'll slow us down if you try leading." There wasn't cruelty in his voice, only certainty. He genuinely believed humans were physically weaker, less experienced, less capable. To him, protecting Mara wasn't kindness. It was simply common sense. Mara held his gaze for a moment. Then she nodded. Understood. She didn't argue. There was no point. People only learned when reality taught them. Minutes later, the simulation chamber activated. The floor trembled beneath their boots. Metal walls folded and shifted. Lights dimmed. Cold recycled air rushed through hidden vents. Within seconds, the academy disappeared. The cadets now stood inside a derelict transport drifting silently through space. Emergency lights blinked crimson. Steam hissed from ruptured pipes. Loose cables sparked overhead. Somewhere deeper inside the ship, metal groaned like a wounded animal. It felt frighteningly real. Threll's voice echoed over the communications channel. "Mission begins now." Io immediately took command. Formation Delta. Nobody questioned him. The Draenic marched confidently toward the first corridor. Manual perfect. Exactly as every textbook recommended. Korsk guarded the right flank. The Skarn twins secured the left. Pell remained near Mara, mostly because everyone else had already forgotten she existed. Mara didn't mind. Instead of watching her squad, she watched the ship. She listened. Every vibration, every echo, every tiny movement of air. Combat wasn't only about enemies. The battlefield itself always spoke. Most soldiers simply never learned its language. They advanced nearly 40 meters before reaching the first junction. One corridor curved left. The other disappeared into darkness on the right. Io stopped. He barely hesitated. Left. Pell looked between both passages. "How do you know?" "The Academy's tactical manual." He pointed confidently. Damaged vessels normally vent atmosphere through maintenance shafts on the starboard side. Standard boarding doctrine recommends the port corridor. Everything sounded logical, professional, textbook perfect. The others immediately prepared to move. Then Mara spoke. "Wait." 5 helmets turned toward her. "I don't think we should go left." Silence. Io frowned. "Explain." Mara closed her eyes for just 1 second. She inhaled slowly. "There." She pointed toward the darkness. "The airflow." Nobody understood. She continued. "The pressure isn't normal." Korsk folded his arms. "I don't hear anything." "You wouldn't. The draft is too weak." She looked toward the left passage again. Something changed the airflow. Pell blinked. "You think there's a trap?" "I don't know." Mara answered honestly. "But something doesn't feel right." Io shook his head. "The manual specifically states." "I know what the manual says." Her voice remained calm. "But manuals aren't standing inside this ship." The Skarn twins exchanged confused growls. Korsk sighed loudly. "You've studied military tactics for 6 months. I've trained since childhood. I trust experience." Mara looked at him quietly. "So do I." For some reason, those 4 words unsettled Pell. There was something strange about the way Mara had spoken them. Not proud, not defensive, just certain. Korsk waved everyone forward. "We're going left." The squad obeyed. Mara stayed behind. Pell hesitated. "You really think?" "Stay back." Pell didn't ask why. She simply followed Mara instead of the others. Exactly 11 seconds later, hell exploded. Hidden plasma turrets erupted from concealed wall compartments. Blue energy bolts flooded the corridor. The confined hallway became a death trap. The Skarn twins fell instantly. Their armor counters flashed bright red. Eliminated. Korsk dove for cover. Too late. Another blast struck his chest. His visor darkened. Eliminated. Io attempted to reorganize the formation. 3 more shots hit before he could issue a second command. Eliminated. The corridor fell silent. Only Mara and Pell remained standing, because they had never entered the kill zone. Threll's voice crackled through the speakers. Exercise terminated. A long pause followed. Cadets Chin and Pell survive. Everyone froze. Even the instructors monitoring the simulation exchanged puzzled looks. The Academy computers replayed the ambush repeatedly. Every angle produced the same conclusion. If Mara had followed the squad, every cadet would have been eliminated, exactly as predicted. Yet she hadn't. Somehow, she had sensed danger before the simulation triggered. Back inside the debriefing chamber, nobody spoke. Korsk stared at the floor. Embarrassment burned across his face. Io replayed tactical recordings over and over. His calculations showed nothing unusual. Nothing. Yet Mara had been right. Finally, Pell leaned closer. How did you know? Mara remained quiet for several seconds. Then she answered. I didn't. Pell frowned. But you warned us. I noticed something. What? The ship. Pell looked confused. The ship. Mara nodded. Wars aren't won by watching enemies. They're won by watching everything. The walls. The air. The sounds. The silence. She looked toward the simulation chamber through the observation glass. Every battlefield tells you what's about to happen. You just have to learn how to listen. Pell stared at her. That wasn't something a former logistics officer should know. Not like that. Not from experience. Before she could ask another question, Mara quietly picked up her helmet. I'm going to clean my gear. She walked away, leaving behind 5 confused cadets. And one growing question. Who exactly was Mara Chin? For the next 3 weeks, life at Kalen Academy appeared to return to normal. The lectures continued. The combat drills grew harder. The endless debates about tactics echoed through classrooms late into the night. Yet beneath the routine, something had changed. Cadets who had barely noticed Mara Chen before now found themselves watching her from across training fields. Some were curious. Others were suspicious. And a few were beginning to feel something they couldn't quite explain. Respect. Korsk refused to admit it aloud. But every time he entered a simulation chamber, he remembered the ambush. He remembered confidently dismissing Mara's warning. He remembered 11 seconds. Just 11 seconds. Between certainty and complete failure. His pride hated it. His conscience wouldn't let him forget it. Io reacted differently. Instead of ignoring the incident, he buried himself in research. He replayed every second of the simulation hundreds of times. He analyzed air currents, pressure fluctuations, acoustic echoes, thermal variations. Nothing. According to every tactical algorithm, there had been no detectable danger. Yet Mara had known. Not guessed. Known. For the first time in his academic career, the manuals had failed to explain reality. Pell, meanwhile, stopped asking questions. She simply observed. She noticed how Mara always chose seats facing the exits. How she unconsciously counted people entering every room. How her eyes constantly scanned reflections in windows instead of staring directly ahead. Even while laughing, part of Mara remained alert. Always. Like someone who expected disaster to arrive without warning. Pell had never seen anyone live that way. And somehow, it made her heart ache. Mara, however, noticed all of it. The lingering glances. The whispered conversations. The growing curiosity. Exactly what she had spent 6 months trying to avoid. She hated attention, because attention always led to questions. Questions led to records. Records led to names. And names could resurrect ghosts better left buried. One quiet evening, Mara stood alone on the Academy's observation deck. Beyond the massive transparent dome stretched an ocean of stars. The dying red sun cast long crimson shadows across the station's outer hull. Most cadets admired the view. Mara studied the escape routes. Old habits never disappeared. She rested one hand against the cold glass. For a brief moment, she allowed herself to believe that perhaps, just perhaps, the past had finally stopped chasing her. Then the alarms began. A piercing emergency siren shattered the silence. Red warning lights flooded every corridor. The comm academy transformed instantly into controlled chaos. Cadets rushed toward emergency stations. Security officers sprinted across docking platforms. Communication channels erupted with overlapping voices. Unknown vessel approaching. Docking request denied. They're ignoring commands. Security teams respond immediately. Mara turned toward the viewport. Her heartbeat slowed. Not from fear. From instinct. Outside the station, a sleek diplomatic transport floated beside Docking Ring 4. Attached to it was another ship. Small. Black. Completely unmarked. No military insignia. No registration codes. No transponder. Just darkness. Her stomach tightened. She had seen ships like that before. Ships that arrived without permission. Rarely left peacefully. 6 armored figures emerged from the mysterious vessel. Magnetic boarding clamps locked onto the transport's hull with heavy metallic thuds. Hydraulic doors exploded outward. The attackers moved with terrifying discipline. No shouting. No hesitation. Every step perfectly coordinated. Professional. Pell ran onto the observation deck, breathing hard. Mara. She pointed toward the viewport. Pirates. Mara didn't answer. Her eyes remained fixed on the boarding team. No. She whispered. Not pirates. Pell looked confused. What? They're soldiers. Below them, Academy security scrambled into action. Emergency barricades sealed hallways. Defense drones powered online. Officers shouted conflicting orders across open communication channels. We need confirmation. Seal the cadet wing. Protect the delegates. Where's the response team? The answer came seconds later. Response unit is 6 minutes away. Someone cursed. Another officer slammed a fist against the console. 6 minutes. They'll never hold that long. The diplomatic transport carried 12 Rexan elders, the oldest political leaders of 3 rival star systems. Their visit represented years of fragile negotiations. If they died aboard a neutral academy, the peace agreement would collapse overnight. 3 civilizations would return to war. Millions could die, all because help was 6 minutes too late. Instructor Threll stormed onto the observation deck. His commanding voice cut through the panic. Seal Docking Ring 4. Nobody enters. Cadets remain inside the academy. He looked toward his students. This is not a training exercise. No one argued. Fear rooted everyone in place. No one, except Mara. She quietly watched the tactical display. 6 attackers. 1 hostage location. Response time. 6 minutes. She performed the calculation automatically. The elders wouldn't survive 3. I can reach them. Her calm voice almost disappeared beneath the alarms. Threll barely glanced at her. Stand down, cadet. They don't have time. They'll have the elders secured before security arrives. I said stand down. His tone carried the weight of absolute authority. This isn't your responsibility. Mara met his eyes. No, she answered softly. It isn't. A painful silence passed between them. Then she added, but saving them is. Threll stepped forward. You are a logistics officer. I'm aware. You are not special forces. No. You are not authorized. No. Then explain why you think you can succeed where trained security officers cannot. Mara looked back toward the transport. Her reflection stared back through the glass. Tired eyes. Old scars. Memories she'd spent half a year trying to bury. Finally, she answered. Because. I've done this before. Threll frowned. What? But Mara was already moving. She disappeared into the crowd before anyone realized what she intended. Pell shouted her name. Mara. Korsk turned. What is she doing? Nobody knew. They simply watched the small human sprint through maintenance corridors instead of the main hallways. Not randomly. With purpose. Like someone who had memorized every passage inside the academy. Because she had. During her very first week. While everyone else learned classroom schedules. Mara had learned escape routes. Ventilation shafts. Maintenance tunnels. Emergency ladders. Places nobody else bothered to notice. She reached an unmarked maintenance hatch. Without slowing, she opened the access panel using a simple engineering tool. The hatch unlocked with a metallic hiss. Darkness waited below. She climbed inside. The shaft barely accommodated her shoulders. Pipes radiated intense heat. The air smelled of lubricant and recycled oxygen. She moved silently, confidently, every turn already stored in her memory. Behind her, the alarms continued screaming. Ahead, only silence. After nearly 2 minutes of crawling through the maintenance network, Mara reached a grated opening overlooking the diplomatic transport. She carefully lifted the inspection panel, then froze. Everything below unfolded exactly as she feared. 4 armed mercenaries held the elders at gunpoint inside the central passenger compartment. 2 more worked frantically at the navigation console, attempting to override the docking clamps. The captives were elderly, unarmed, terrified. One wrong decision, and every hostage would die. Mara slowly lowered herself back into the shadows. She closed her eyes. Not to pray. To think. Charging directly into 6 professional soldiers would be suicide. Heroics killed people. Patience saved them. That lesson had been carved into her soul years earlier. She listened. One attacker complained about the docking software. Another checked ammunition. One repeatedly glanced toward the main entrance. Good. They expected security to come through the doors. No one was watching the floor. A tiny smile crossed Mara's face. For the first time that day, she saw a chance. Not a good one. Just enough. And sometimes, just enough was all survival required. Mara remained perfectly still beneath the maintenance grate. Above her, the transport echoed with frightened voices, hurried footsteps, and the cold metallic clicks of rifles being checked. She slowed her breathing. 1 inhale, 1 exhale. Everything else disappeared. The academy, the alarms, the station outside. None of it mattered anymore, because the moment she entered a battlefield, there was only one rule: stay alive long enough to save someone else. The lead mercenary barked orders in a language most species couldn't understand, but Mara understood every word. It was an old military dialect, one she had hoped never to hear again. Override the docking clamps. We leave in 3 minutes. If security enters, kill the elders first. Those words hit her like a knife. For a fraction of a second, she wasn't standing inside a diplomatic transport. She was somewhere else. Karate Station. Smoke, blood, burning metal, people screaming over broken communications. A frightened scientist clutching a data drive with trembling hands. A security officer desperately trying to reload while plasma rounds tore through the corridor. 11 minutes. Only 11 minutes. Yet they had replayed inside her mind every single night for 6 months. She still remembered every face, every scream, every life she couldn't save. Mara forced herself back to the present. Not now. Memories could wait. The living could not. She studied the room again. For hostages guards. 2 technicians. 6 enemies. 1 human. No firearm. Only a heavy-duty engineering multi-tool attached to her belt. Hardly ideal. But wars were never fought under ideal conditions. She waited. 1 technician leaned closer to the control console. The second moved beside him. Perfect. The guards focused entirely on the main entrance, exactly where they expected security to appear. Nobody watched the maintenance access behind them. Nobody expected danger to crawl out of the floor. Mara quietly removed the grate. Not a sound. Years of practice. Years of survival. She lowered herself silently behind the control console. The nearest mercenary never even looked back. He was too busy forcing the docking systems offline. His fingers danced across holographic controls. He never noticed the shadow rising behind him. Mara moved. Fast. Precise. Merciless. The blunt edge of her multi-tool crashed into the exposed gap between his helmet and shoulder armor. The impact severed his neural balance instantly. His body collapsed before he could cry out. She caught him, lowering him silently onto the floor. 1 down. 5 remained. The second technician spun around. His eyes widened. Too late. He raised his rifle. Mara was already inside his reach. She grabbed the weapon with both hands. Twisted sharply. The plasma discharge exploded harmlessly into the control console instead of her chest. Sparks showered across the compartment. Warning sirens erupted. Lights flickered violently. The room exploded into chaos. Contact! The lead mercenary roared. All 4 guards turned simultaneously. Their weapons snapped toward the console. Instead of running, Mara kicked the damaged rifle into the nearest guard's legs. He stumbled. Just enough. She charged. Not because she was fearless, because hesitation killed faster than bullets. The first mercenary swung his rifle like a club. She ducked beneath it. The weapon smashed into the wall behind her. She drove her elbow into his ribs. He grunted. She twisted his wrist. The rifle clattered across the floor. Before it stopped sliding, she already had it. 3 shots. 3 precise bursts. Stun rounds struck 2 attackers squarely in the chest. The third caught one across the shoulder. Not enough. He stayed standing. The compartment erupted with blinding blue plasma fire. Energy bolts slammed into walls. Seats exploded into fragments. Emergency windows cracked under the impacts. The terrified elders dropped to the floor. Some prayed. Others simply closed their eyes. They believed they were about to die. Mara didn't. She couldn't afford that luxury. Every movement became instinct. She used overturned seats as cover. Forced the attackers into narrow angles where only one could fire at a time. She never stayed still. Never gave them a clean shot. She wasn't stronger. She wasn't faster. She simply refused to fight the battle they wanted. Instead, she made them fight hers. The wounded mercenary roared with frustration. She's only one human. Push her. 3 attackers rushed together. Exactly what Mara had hoped for. The transport corridor was too narrow. They blocked one another. Only the front man could attack effectively. The others became obstacles. She slammed the emergency bulkhead release. A heavy security door dropped halfway from the ceiling. The leading mercenary ducked underneath. The 2 behind him weren't fast enough. The massive steel barrier crashed between them, separating the group. Now, it was 1 against 1. The first attacker lunged. Mara sidestepped. His momentum carried him forward. She redirected his own weight. He slammed face first into the bulkhead. Before he recovered, she struck the base of his helmet. His body went limp. 2 more. A plasma bolt ripped across her left arm. White-hot pain exploded through her shoulder. She staggered. Warm blood soaked her sleeve almost instantly. Her vision blurred. Her fingers trembled. For 1 terrifying second, her body begged her to stop, to rest, to surrender. Instead, another memory surfaced. Karate Station. A little girl hiding beneath an overturned laboratory table. Crying. Terrified. Asking one question over and over. Please, don't leave me. Mara had carried that child through burning corridors while explosions collapsed the station around them. She had promised herself something that day. As long as she could still stand, she would never abandon people who couldn't protect themselves. Not again. Never again.